When the goats arrive in the traps, no matter what time it is, even if you're tired, it's like an adrenaline rush that comes over you. Okay, everyone, there are goats in the traps. It's like the first time. Nothing ever changes. It's always as exciting as it was, and we don't want to lose that.
Good job, everybody.
For a long, long time, Steeve Côté has nursed a passion for a shy animal, the mountain goat. Since 1994, this professor, researcher, and field worker has headed up the only long-term study in the world on the ecology and the behavior of this little-known ungulate. Each year, for several weeks, Steeve travels several hundred kilometers north of the Jasper National Park at the heart of the Alberta Rockies.
When I'm home in Quebec and packing my things and setting off to Alberta, it's not just the scientific part, the fact that I have to capture and observe the goats, that drives me. I really feel like I'm going to my second home. I like that it's not an easy place to get to. It's not like sitting on a beach amid the palm trees. The conditions are pretty harsh. But when you love that kind of life, it's like a drug. You can't do without it.
Before going to the observation station on Call Ridge Mountain, Steeve picks up supplies in the village of Grande Cache to enable him to survive at the summit for at least 2 weeks. More than 30 kilometers of bumpy roads and steep trails separate the village of Grande Cache from the study area. At over 2,000 meters altitude, Steeve finds the goat population of Call Ridge Mountain.
Here we're at the western extremity of the study area. This is the place where the animals will spend around 70% of their time. As much in winter as in summer, they spend a lot of time here. And this is mainly the place where the males live. So the males have a home range that is much smaller. They only use around 3 or 4 square kilometers. Whereas the females, more vulnerable to predators because of the young, move around more and have a home range around 10 times greater than that of the male.
At the end of May, the females usually give birth to a single kid. Kids stay with their mothers for a year, sometimes 2. To avoid predators, among them the grizzly, the wolf, and the cougar, the females move around in a territory of around 30 square kilometers. The mountain goat is an ungulate or hoofed member of the family Bovidae. In North America, mountain goat populations, an estimated total of 75,000 to 110,000 individuals, reside mainly in British Columbia and Alaska. In Alberta, the mountain goat has suffered a worrying decline in numbers over the 20th century. The government decided, therefore, in 1988, to ban hunting of the species and to set up a management plan. The study of the Call Ridge goats will enable us to better understand group dynamics and behavior.
It's a project that will mainly study the effects of individual variation, the contribution of each individual to the whole of that population. That's the kind of overall goal, and the best way to go about it is to use a longitudinal study with marked individuals that we follow from the moment they're born, or as early as possible, to the moment they die. There's one in the basin just there.
Yes, you can see it with the naked eye.
There's a big female just there. The way the project works is, even though I'm here every year, Lots of graduate students join the project. So I have master's and doctorate students, as well as summer assistants, people doing their back. And the first thing to do, I tell them, over the first weeks, is to walk. Go to as many places as possible. Try to immerse yourself in the study area. Find the animals' habitats and sit down for hours and watch the animals, just to develop their behavioral repertoire, to know what they do.
What we're interested in is how the goats spend their time during the day, throughout the summer, and also at other times of the year. They devote part of their time to feeding, to resting, to remaining vigilant, so it's about knowing these differences between the sexes, between the ages. Whenever I go to observe the goats, I'll gather all the observations and interactions between the individuals that will allow us to determine who is more dominant, and thus establishing the hierarchy of dominance in the population. And since we have marked the individuals, it gives us a good idea of the various categories that exist.
The mountain goat is a species that's pretty sensitive to disturbance. So alongside other mountain species or other ungulates like caribou or the mouflon, there's no comparison. Goats are far less tolerant of humans' presence in any form. So when we're working on the terrain, we can't get as close as we can to caribous or mouflons. It's incredible. You can go right up to mouflons. Usually, it's fairly peaceful. They feed for around an hour and a half at this time of the year, before a period when they'll bed down for the night. And sometimes they do act aggressively. Look, here's a nice interaction. Number 160 has just moved, but 297 isn't happy. We call that a circular combat. 297 has stood her ground. She was lying down, but she got up to fight the other. Now she'll probably lie down again. There she goes.
To differentiate the goats, the team must capture and mark them. But how do you catch a goat that runs as soon as it sees a human shadow within 2 kilometers? In spring, the goats emerge from a period of severe winter drought. They eat the green shoots of waterlogged vegetation, resulting in a lack of sodium in their bodies. As minerals are limited in the alpine tundra, they won't hesitate to walk several kilometers to find the salt they badly need. And it's precisely this lack of sodium that allows Steeve Côté and his team to capture them. Close to the camp, 8 traps containing mouth-watering blocks of salt are awaiting our climbers.
This is the observation point to observe the traps, which is about 100 meters down there. Half an hour ago, we came back from the observation area, and we saw a group of 22 goats who will no doubt come to the traps tonight or tomorrow morning. In fact, we're waiting for them, as we saw them come down the nearest mountain. We'll swap places in 30 minutes to check whether the goats have come back. For trap duty, we always rotate. So each morning, someone gets up and goes to check to see if there are any goats in the traps. If not, the next person will go half an hour later, and so on until 8 o'clock in the morning when we all get up for breakfast and leave for the day. The morning when there are goats in the traps, the world stops turning. Okay, everyone, goats in the traps.
When someone comes saying there are goats in the traps, then everybody has to wake up and dress instantly in under 2 minutes, and we head for the blind where we can observe the animals.
The team conducts annual surveys of each of the 159 goats in the herd to better understand individual variation. The new goats must be captured and marked. Those already tagged are also captured once again between the ages of 2 and 4 to install bigger tags and monitor their growth. They proceed carefully as the goats are extremely timid and may flee at the slightest suspicious noise.
Between the wooden traps, we also have a balance system.
We have 171 on number 2.
It's very useful because it allows us to weigh the animals, as weight data is really important, without having to handle the animals.
Okay, she's been replaced. Now it's 268 on number 2.
And when we know that males habitually show up at the traps just once a year, we can easily understand the excitement that drives the team.
Okay, number 5 is ready. Wait a little.
The goat's aggressiveness could be dangerous. That's why they're put to sleep first before being handled.
Mountain goats are a very aggressive species. They have 4 or 5 fights per hour per individual. And that's an element that interested me from the start. When I first started, that was the question that most interested me. These animals were very aggressive, and we couldn't work out why.
Why is a goat dominant or submissive? Is it due to the size of its horns, its weight, its age? To answer these questions and many more, the team takes several measurements and samples.
Mark that he has a collar. I'd already marked that. The frequency is 150, 981.
Brown collar.
So with this collar, we're able to find out wherever he goes. And it enables us, with young males like this, he's 3 years old, to know which scatter beyond the study area. Length of left horn, 213.
213.
So we always measure the horns, as it might be important in their aggressive behavior. That's important in reproduction. 11.5.
11.5.
So if we take an impression of the teeth, we can measure the width of the mouth and the depth too, to estimate the size of bites in vegetation. That's fine. Don't move. Okay, we're going down 136.5, 136.5.
Excellent.
At the beginning, when we started 15 years ago, we'd capture any of them, no matter the age of the animal. Now it's rather different, because we found that there can be a big side effect of capture at an early age. So if we capture a kid, there's a big risk of abandonment. So if the mother did abandon it, firstly, we'd be causing an ethical problem. We don't want to have a negative impact on the animals. And also it has an impact on our data on reproductive success, because we want to follow the individual from the moment of birth to its death. So we don't touch the female. She's not drugged, she's in the trap. We'll open the trap and let the female go. As soon as the female has gone, we'll leave the 1-year-old there. He's just behind her. Once he's seen her ass, he'll be able to focus on the mother and run with her. So he'll end up on the right path for escape and he'll be safe.
After 4 hours' work, following a rather brutal awakening, It's finally time for the first coffee of the day and a well-deserved breakfast.
Being here in the mountains at an altitude of 2,000 meters is not an easy life. There are plenty of people who couldn't hack it, but we know that when we start, and we're happy to live with it. We have no electricity here. We work with a generator when we can. We recharge the batteries. We manage. I'd even say we're pretty well organized in the sense that the little chalet has all you need to be happy.
We don't really have time off. We work a lot all the time. But in general, we go down to the town every 2 or 3 weeks for the essentials, like washing yourself or your clothes or going shopping for food supplies.
Working in the darkness and sometimes difficult conditions. That's the price you pay to understand these animals. With the season moving along rapidly, the clock is ticking. Will Steve and his team succeed in gathering all the necessary data in time? Today is June 23rd. 5 centimeters of snow have fallen and no goat has come to the traps. The clock is ticking because in 2 weeks' time, they won't be visiting the traps anymore, with their need for sodium satisfied until the following spring.
This morning we didn't have any goats in the traps, but we've already had 19 or 20 captures. So we're not doing badly in the best capture period. I'm confident that by the end of the week, we should boost figures to our usual standards of between 30 and 35.
I'm not the only biologist. There are several of us here who love this adventurous aspect and everything that relates to understanding a species better. For better conservation measure, better management, but also to further extend our knowledge, not just about mountain goats, but our comprehension of the phenomena related to the development and evolution of ecology.
Lots of ecologists, and I'm among them, are really interested in the applications of what we do. It's not just accumulating knowledge for the sake of it. We want it to be useful. In the case of Kaw Ridge, it's a fine example of a fundamental and applied study, because all of the research we do on reproduction strategies form the bedrock of the new management plan for mountain goats in Alberta. A study like Kaw Ridge has helped to better understand why these populations were in decline. We found that the age of the females at first reproduction was almost 5 years old, when it should be around 2 years old for a species of this weight. It was found that the survival of the young was still quite low. We're talking 50–55% per year. And their development is slow too. Females in most species reach their adult weight by 2 years, 3 years old, 4 maximum. The goats only reach that weight around 7 years old. So, with this data, we're able to predict the dynamic of the Kaw Ridge population. The new management plan is based almost exclusively on the measures taken at Kaw Ridge. And now we have a far more conservative plan than previously.
Since the management plan was implemented in the early 2000s, the population of mountain goats in Alberta has gone from 1,150 to around 2,300 individuals, even though since 2001, hunting has once again been permitted in certain sectors. When the study of the Kaw Ridge goats began in the early 1990s, the herd was made up of 76 individuals. By 2008, this had more than doubled.
I actually can't see the end of this project. Personally, it's really important to me to come here, but scientifically, it's now a project that is much better anchored than it was at the time. And with 15, 18 years of data, I can ask questions that hardly anybody else can ask, because you have to be capable of having animals marked for 15 years to answer these questions. The only small problem hanging over the study area, and which has almost always existed, is that we're in a zone where there's a coal mine nearby. It's around 4 kilometers from the hut. This has always been a worry to me, and as long as we operate open-cast coal mines, we won't be using more renewable energies, so it's still a threat.
After all these years spent observing the goats of Kaw Ridge, Steve knows each individual by its name, or rather by its number. Apart from 2 goats, all were born after his study began.
Clearly, there are animals for whom we have more anecdotes, and they become perhaps not like our dogs and cats, but not far off, because we know their history. Those with the most history for me are the ones I saw at the start, when I began as a master's student. There are several that I tagged when they were babies. I saw them born, I've seen them throughout their lives. They're now aging, they're old females. Only 2 remain from when I started. One is 17 and the other is 15. The older one is one of my favorites, number 106. I have a photo with her the first year I was here, when I had lots of hair. So obviously when I see her, yesterday for instance, I saw her for a while, her collar was torn, and I don't want to capture her just to replace it. If ever anything happened during the capture, it'd be more difficult than with another goat that I don't know. These memories are important to me, and I can cast my mind back 15, 20 years and see all the things that have changed. I've always got Kaw Ridge to hang on to, because there was never a year when I didn't go.